On a day that a beloved member of the 49ers came back to the team, another beloved member, at least by the fans, is on his way out. What is good, everybody? Welcome to another Gold Standard podcast. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera here with you because there is breaking news. And that breaking news is that Jordan Mason has been traded to the Minnesota Vikings. The 49ers had previously tendered Jordan Mason at the second round tender. That was a $5.3 million contract, but they have in fact traded him to the Minnesota Vikings. The Niners are going to get a 2026 sixth round pick, and the Niners and Minnesota are swapping picks this year. So the Niners had pick 187. They now get pick 160. So the Niners get, what do they move up there? 27 spots, right? And then they get the sixth round pick as well in 2026 next year. Not shocking that Jordan Mason got traded. Look, they have a ton of running backs on the roster, right? They have Christian McCaffrey. They have Isaac Guerendo. They just re-signed Patrick Taylor Jr. So, it's not shocking they traded from a relative position of strength. And I know a lot of fans like Jordan Mason. He did a lot of good work when he was here. He ran hard, no question about it. But he wasn't exactly an essential piece of the roster. They're getting more draft picks. They're adding draft picks. And one thing I do like about this is they are relying on one of their advantages. And it's something I talked a lot about with Michelle Majuk. We talked about it on Friday. Like, the Niners have an ability to find running backs, right? Between Bobby Turner and Kyle Shanahan, they found Jordan Mason off the scrap heap, right? He was undrafted free agent. They picked him up. He was a good player for them. He gave them good production while he was here. He certainly wasn't going to be a player that they were going to sign to a massive second contract. So he didn't have much of a future with the team beyond this year. So they decided to make a move. And that move was to trade Jordan Mason. It's a good move by the 49ers. It is a solid move. Now, of course, the downside is you don't have him here this year, but you're hoping the other running backs on the roster can make up for that. And look, the Niners made some head-scratching moves this offseason, including one today when they brought back Kyle Juszczyk, which I'll talk about in a couple minutes. This was a good move by the Niners. Rely on your ability to find running backs in different places, whether it's later in the draft, whether it's on the undrafted free agent, pool, so to speak. Bobby Turner is one of the oldest coaches in the NFL. I don't mean to be glib, but you don't know how much longer he's going to want to coach. You don't know how much longer he's going to be around, quite frankly. If he's the guy that can pluck these running backs from, the abyss, rely on him to find you another one. It's absolutely what the 49ers should be doing. They're not going to give Jordan Mason a big contract after this year. So if you can get a trade for him, you do it. I think it's a good trade for both sides, frankly. Minnesota's in much more of a win now position than the 49ers are in, honestly. They're trying to, put the cherry on their sundae. Jordan Mason's a good player. He'll come in and be a really good player for them. So I get this move from both sides. And I know that I've seen a couple funny comments in the chat that I'll get to. I know that, everybody loved Jordan Mason, and I get that, and I loved him too. But this is very much a business move by the 49ers. Feelings clearly were not part of it, and I think it was a good move. I think that they were smart to do it. I'm glad that they did it. I'm trying to see some of the reaction on Twitter. Chat, you tell me, how do you feel about this move? Did you want Jordan Mason to stick around? We saw him last year. And when he was healthy enough to perform and play, he did a great job. He was leading the league in rushing for a little while, but he broke down, man, repeatedly, again and again and again. As we all know, the Niners were down to RB5 last year. So you couldn't really rely on him to be a main dog. I think everybody saw everything for what it was, right? The Niners recognized he's a good player, but there are some things there that are going to stop us from signing him to another contract. So they moved on. EMA Beats says, LOL, sixth round and a pick swap. He's worth a third. He's a top 5 running back, even 3 running. He started the whole season. I think that you're overvaluing him a little, EMA Beats, quite frankly. Look, Jordan Mason is good. He played well, but he's been banged up. He's been hurt a lot, and particularly last season. I don't think he's as good as you think. I clearly the market agreed with me in thinking that he's not as valuable as a third round pick. Again, especially this draft. This is a very running back heavy draft. I actually today did an interview with Thor Nystrom of fantasylife.com. We did a whole draft interview, and he was saying how basically defensive line and running back, this draft is incredible. You can get a guy like Cam Skattebo in the third round, and he's a very, really good player. So it makes sense that the Niners would make this move again because they can find undrafted free agents and the draft is really deep. They now have, well, they still have 11 picks because they did a pick swap this year. They pick up the extra pick next year. So I think it was good. Andrew Malo, excuse me if I said that wrong, says 49ers cold hard business on point. I think this just frankly made sense. I'm not trying to be, business guy and worship owners and all that. I just think this was a smart move. Shout out to Gary Simonson, new YouTube channel member. Thank you very much for signing up, Gary. Appreciate the support. Shout out to all the YouTube channel members. If you want to become one, it's less than $3 a month. You get custom emojis, membership badges, and priority comment response. Gary, did you sign up twice? You're on here twice, but okay. I'll give you the extra fist bump. Anybody that signs up, you get a fist bump from me. That's how it goes. Let's see. Omar. Oh man. Omarigno. Sorry, I can't read it. That's terrible if I butchered that. Says, I want a Jordan Mason type running back in the draft. I think you can find one. Like I said, Cam Skattebo you can get in the third round. That would be a tremendous ad by the 49ers if they could add him. Certainly you would take that trade, right? A good running back, a solid running back that's much younger and much cheaper than Jordan Mason was going to be. Because remember, if the 49ers had not traded him, they were going to pay him $5.3 million, which was higher than, I think, all but 17 running backs in the league. And one of the running backs is on the 49ers and Christian McCaffrey. So you can replace Jordan Mason's production in the draft for much cheaper. And that, that's really what it comes down to. I don't mean to make this so cut and dry and heartless, but that's kind of what it comes down to, especially at this position. Dawad Jones says, Niners core players are gone, rebuild in your face. You don't understand that you are delusional, just the facts. Some Niners core players are gone. Some are coming back, as we saw with Kyle Juszczyk, which if you want to get into that, we can. Let me just read a couple more comments here. No Camargo says, Mason won us games, WTF. I get why you like Jordan Mason. Almost every time he came in, he played well. I totally get that. But I think that maybe you're overvaluing him and his contributions a bit. And not his contributions, how easily the 49ers can replace that production, I should say. That is a more clear way to say it. I think you're overvaluing how hard it will be to replace Jordan Mason. I don't think it would be that hard. I think the 49ers think Patrick Taylor Jr. can do that, quite frankly, if you asked him. Eric Branch just confirming the news. Niners get a 2025 fifth and a 2026 sixth, and the Niners give up a 2025 sixth round pick. So that's a clearer way to say it. Thank you, Eric Branch, by the way. I hate when they give the actual pick number. What I wish they would do is say, pick round 5, pick 15 or whatever. That would make it really clear as to what the actual terms of the deal is. But Niners get a fifth and a sixth. They give up Mason and a sixth. That's a much, much easier way to say it. The Gator Viking says, bro, it was an ankle sprain. Running backs get ankle sprains. Calm down. It was multiple things with Jordan Mason. He was injured multiple times. It wasn't just one injury. It was a recurring thing too. He got hurt. He came back. He got hurt again. And I know all running backs get hurt. But again, why do I have to put up with this if I'm the 49ers? I have other running backs on the roster. I can add more running backs cheaply in the draft. Like, why do I need to stick with Jordan Mason? Especially because this is going to be his last year with the team, because they would have signed him to that $5.3 million deal, and then he would have been a free agent next year. And you're definitely not going to sign him to a second running back contract. So why not move him if you're the 49ers? Honestly, again, I think it makes perfect sense. Look, I never hesitate to criticize the 49ers when I think they've done a bad thing. I think this was a good thing. I really do. I get that you like him, but I think it made sense from all sides. From a football side, it made sense from a business side. There's no reason not to do it. How much was Jordan Mason going to add on this roster this season, right? Especially because, again, this draft is full of running backs. A lot of people, I'm surprised at your reaction to this, honestly. I'm just looking in the chat. A lot of people don't like this move. They really like Jordan Mason. A couple people wishing him well, which is I like to see. Barbados says hard to overvalue on a team that ran through 5 running backs last year. Right. Well, part of the reason they did is because Mason himself got hurt, right? You don't get to running back 5 if Jordan Mason stays healthy. And he didn't, unfortunately, for the 49ers last year. I think he'll do well in Minnesota. I think it's a good move. Again, there are some trades in the NFL that are just good, right? And this is good from both sides. David Lombardi points out that the Niners wouldn't have been in the 5th round of this draft at all without the Debo and Mason trades because the NFL took away a 5th round pick when the Niners overpaid a player and tried to get that money back. It was the accounting error, as they called it. But of course, now they end up with 2 picks in the 5th round. And yes, we all know the Niners' history of picking in the 5th round, right? Yes, we understand. But these things need to be done. I'm just trying to see. People are asking about the 2nd round tender. I think the way the tender situation works is you put the tender on him, and then if a team negotiates a deal with him, they can pay him that. They'll pay him whatever deal they make and then give up the pick. But if you can just flat out negotiate a trade with the other team, you can avoid giving up that whatever the pick is that's tied to the tender. I believe that's the way it works, if I'm reading this correctly. And I also think that Mason got a 2-year deal from the Minnesota Vikings as part of this trade. So that's part of it too. I can't see the terms of it. I think it was for over $7 million though, which is, that's more than he was going to make on the 2nd round tender. He was only going to make 5.3, but he ended up making even more. Shoot, I can't find it now. I apologize. Let me see if I can see the actual term. There it is. Vikings are signing Mason to a 2-year deal with over $7 million fully guaranteed at signing with a maximum value of $12 million. So it's a good deal for Jordan Mason too. Don't shed any tears for him. He's going to a good team, a playoff team, which he was not on last year, and he's going to make more money than he's ever made in his career. It's a good day. It's a good day for Jordan Mason. Gary Simonson, thank you, Gary, for signing up to be a YouTube channel member, and for the super chat, says, stoked to join. I like Mason, and I don't love this move, but I understand it given the loaded draft in terms of running backs. I just wish they had gotten a better value. Would like to have seen us get a 4th. I can understand that, especially because the Niners are also kicking in a pick. You would think that it'd be nice if they could have gotten a little bit more of a pick, maybe in the 4th round. I don't know. Do you want to be one of those people that say, hey, the Niners are good in the 5th round, leave it alone, right? Don't mess with it. They got Greenlaw in the 5th. They got Kittle in the 5th. They got Lenore in the 5th. Maybe that's the money round for them, right? I don't know. I'm surprised. I really thought more of you would be on board with this. Wealthy Mind says, you put a 2nd round tender and got a 6th round pick for him. LOL. This franchise is dumb AF. But you only get the 2nd round tender if a team signs him to a contract. That's the thing. Excuse me. I just need to take a drink there. You only get the 2nd round tender if a team negotiates with him and signs the contract. So no team was going to do that. So that's why they're working out this trade. Trust me, this quick to criticize the 49ers. This was not a move that deserves criticism. So it wasn't like they could have gotten a 2nd round pick if they didn't do this trade. That, to be clear, that is not what happened. I just want to make sure that that's clear. It's not like the Niners could have had a 2nd round pick, but they said, no, we want a 5th round pick instead. That is not what happened. So, okay, I just want to make that clear. All right, we can read more and get back to this at the end. 49ers Shaolin style says Mason broke down at the tail end. He won't last a full season, but the 6th rounder is not even worth it. It's a 5th rounder, to be clear. And the Niners are getting a 5th rounder, not a 6th rounder. They're giving up a 6th rounder. And also the Niners are getting a 6th rounder in 2026. So they did a pick swap this year, and they're getting a 6th round pick in 2026, to be clear. They didn't get fleeced, man. Joe Boyd says Kyle and John keep getting fleeced by every team in trades this year. This is not a fleecing. It's not a fleecing. Honestly, teams were not out there chomping at the bit to trade you a high draft pick for Jordan Mason. Again, you have to look at the quality of the draft class, right? At the position and what that would cost. They're not going to do it. Why are they going to give up, a 4th round pick for Jordan Mason when they could take a running back in the 4th round this year? Now, they wanted the flexibility to not have to do that in Minnesota, and they signed him to a 2-year deal. But the teams are not giving you a 3rd round pick for Jordan Mason. The way we feel about him is not how other teams feel about him. I promise. Good player, not a great player. Moonman Ed, YouTube channel member, says Scatterboo to the 49ers confirmed. Look, I'm not going to lie. I am not a big college football guy. I don't watch it that much. I'm scouting the draft class now. I'm talking to people that are smarter than me about it. But just when you just Google Cam Scatterboo highlights, it's just fun, man. That dude is a fun watch. He's bouncing off people left and right. Tremendous balance. I don't know that he's the fastest guy in the world, but he has good acceleration. It would be super fun if the Niners could get Scatterboo. I would love it. Now, obviously, I don't want it to pick 11, but I would love Cam Scatterboo on the 49ers. And I feel like he would fit right in to that kind of mentality that they used to have, that smash you in the face mentality. That would be fun. I would absolutely like that. Wealthy Mind says you traded him to a team that has your number. Well, yeah, but it wasn't the running back. That wasn't why Minnesota beat San Francisco. I mean, come on, let's be honest here. It wasn't like, oh, man, their running backs are killing us. Sam Darnold cooked the Niners, unfortunately. I mean, he threw that 97-yard touchdown pass to Justin Jefferson. It was like 95 or 97, whatever it was. The running back was not the key. All right. If you want to get back to the Jordan Mason news, we can. But I have to get to the news of the day. And I can't believe I'm even saying this, but I shouldn't be surprised at this point. And that's Kyle Juszczyk coming back to the 49ers. He was a free agent for a day, 2 days. He went to visit, took a little trip to Pittsburgh, and then boom, he comes back to the 49ers. And I got to tell you, I mean, if you've ever listened to any show I've ever done, it annoys the hell out of me. Like, it just annoys the hell out of me. What was the point of all this, right? What is the point of cutting Kyle Juszczyk and bringing him back? You saved like a tiny little bit of money, maybe, and you guaranteed him for next year. Okay, I really thought that one positive from this the Niners being ruthless savages, right, was that, hey, they're going to trim some of the fat. Some of the people that they're getting rid of in this effort to save money did need to be culled away. And I always thought Kyle Juszczyk was one of them. And then he did it. And I was like, great. And I also thought it might open up some interesting possibilities for the offense, right? I talked about this with Michelle on Friday. Could you put Kittle in the backfield more as sort of an H-back? Could you put Luke Harrell there? Maybe. Could you put Isaac Guerrero there and have Guerrero and CMC on the field at the same time? I would love that. None of that seems like it's going to happen anytime soon because Juice is back. So there's no need to do any of that. But I thought it might have been a chance for Kyle to kind of evolve things a little bit and change some things up, switch it up a little bit, maybe not rely on 21 personnel as much. Now, not. And I think that it's indicative of a couple of things. First of all, and I think Ian nails it. Ian Sharp. George needed him. I think George Kittle was heartbroken over the whole thing. I think that a lot of guys, Juice was very well liked in the 49ers locker room. So I'm not saying that they did it just because of that, but they are trying to re-sign George Kittle to another contract. And, keeping 85 happy might not be it. But more, I almost wonder if this is a move from Jed and Parag and the bean counters to kind of placate Kyle Shanahan. We know Kyle loves Juice. We know John Lynch loves Juice. He was one of their first free agent signings. They paid him huge money, more money than any fullback I'd ever seen in the history of the NFL by a country mile. They love him. And then they cut him. And I wonder if Kyle and John flipped out and they were like, you're not even saving that much money. Why? You're cutting one of our core guys, a guy that we love. And I wonder if they flipped out and finally Jed and Parag were like, all right, you know what? We'll throw you a bone. Okay, I guess you can have your treat back, right? I almost wonder if that's what it is. That's what it screams to me. Because teams don't really operate this way. If there's a guy you want to keep, if there's a guy you really want to keep, you don't cut him and let him go take visits with other teams and get offers from other teams and potentially leave. If you really want to keep the guy, you keep the guy. You don't cut him and then sign him back a couple of days later. That's just a weird thing. That is not how teams operate, and it's certainly not how good teams operate. You don't need to actually cut the guy to give him permission to go out and find his market, right? They didn't cut Deebo Samuel to go let him go out and find his market. They gave his agent permission to seek a trade. You don't have to cut a guy in order to do that. But the Niners did cut Kyle Juszczyk. So that's why it's something here is not right. It's not just, oh, well, they cut him the whole time and they always knew that they were going to sign him back. No, I don't care if that's what they tell you. No, we have the whole history of the NFL. We know how the process works. We know that this is not how it works. Teams don't cut guys they really want to keep. So I wonder if they cut him and Kyle and John flipped out and maybe there was some reaction from the locker room as well. I don't know, right? Maybe Kittle was firing off texts and Christian McCaffrey was firing off texts and Trent Williams. Who knows? I don't know. I'm not saying that happened. I'm purely speculating. But all I know is I've been watching the NFL for 35 years and you don't cut guys and then sign them back a day later in normal operating procedure. That is not normal. And I think we can all just acknowledge that, right? Andre Garibay says Kittle and CMC cried to Jet. Like, again, maybe. We don't know. It'd be fascinating. And you could tell, too, just the reaction from some of the 49ers beat writers. They were like, what the hell's going on? So, yeah, I think it caught everybody by surprise. Juice is back. Hooray. According to sources, quote unquote sources, it's got to be Kyle Juszczyk. He supposedly turned down more money from other teams to come back from the 49ers. I don't know if I believe that or if it was more money. Was it like $10 more? I don't know. Here's one thing I do know. Kyle Juszczyk loves to tell everybody how much money he turned down. He loves it. He loves it. Andre Garibay says Trent threatened to retire. That would be hilarious. But yeah, like I don't look at any other, like in your job, would an employer go to you and be like, hey, we're firing you. Feel free to look for another job. And if you can't find one in a day or two, we'll hire you back. Like that. No, it just doesn't happen. Sergio Fernandez says with the 2-year contract, Juice will be able to officially join the 49ers alumni. 10 years with the team gets you in. Shanny wants to see him at every reunion. Who cares about that? Really? Like, I get why the players themselves care about it. But my God, we're sitting here talking about just, you get to be up on the wall of the players that were with the 49ers for 10 years. So what, man? So what? Do you even know everybody on the list? I don't know everybody on the list. Who cares about that? Joe Tiz, kind of wish Fred Warner raised his voice over Greenlaw if that's how they operate. Well, that was one thing I did wonder. Like, does Fred Warner look at this and go, okay, so you kept George's buddy and Christian McCaffrey's buddy, but you didn't keep my buddy in Dre Greenlaw? A guy that certainly provides more production and value to the team than Kyle Juszczyk by a friggin' mile. And maybe Fred, didn't think that. I don't want to put, words in his mouth or anything like that. But that thought did go through my head. As if Fred was like, damn, we couldn't find a couple more $1 million to bring back my guy, who maybe we win the Super Bowl if he doesn't pop his Achilles, but we're bringing back Kyle Juszczyk. Again, not trying to put words in his mouth. That was just, I like that you had the same thought that I did. Thank you. Joe Boyd says, we are just giving great players away for nothing. Again, this is going back to the Jordan Mason thing. He wasn't a great player. He was a good running back. He wasn't like the best running back in the league. I promise you. Just because he came in mop-up duty and played well doesn't mean the rest of the league is like, oh my God, we have to get this guy. No, he's a good player. He is a good player, but the rest of the league does not look at him the way we look at him. And you just have to acknowledge that. Trust me, I would crush the 49ers if I thought they got fleeced in the trade. I don't. I really don't. And I'm not trying to, just put a positive spin on it. I see this tweet from Nick Wagner. Let me throw it up on the screen. He says, Mason's market goes above what the Niners were willing to pay RB2. Christian McCaffrey, Isaac Guerrero, and Patrick Taylor remain on the depth chart. As always, safe to expect the Niners to add a running back or two in this year's draft. Let me ask you this. Would you rather have Jordan Mason or Cam Skattebo? And at a much cheaper rate, by the way. And maybe you say Jordan Mason. I would say Cam Skattebo, quite frankly. Or another running back. I talked to Thor Nystrom of Fantasy Life. He had Skattebo as the 10th best running back in the draft. And he looks really intriguing as a player. Now there's 9 other guys ahead of him that are even better. Like, this is a super, super deep draft. And maybe if you're having a hard time with this right now, maybe you'll feel better about it once the draft happens and you see if the Niners take a running back. And then you're like, oh, all right, now I don't feel as bad about it. If you want to reserve judgment, that's fine. I get that. That makes sense. Joe says the problem is they should have gotten a second, not a fifth this year. No. Okay, again, I think there's confusion about how the tender situation works. That you only get the second round pick that they tendered him at if another team just flat out negotiates a contract with him on the open market. If you trade him, you can work out a deal for whatever you want. So that it wasn't like the 49ers could have had a second round pick if they did nothing and then opted to give up that second round pick and instead do the deal that they did. I really like, why would any team do that? I mean, look, the 49ers make some crazy moves. They're not going to do that. If you go look on Twitter, you would see people saying, this doesn't make any sense. The Niners could have got a second round pick. They're not saying that because that's not how it works. So just again, I hope everybody's clear on that. If I haven't made that clear, I hope I did just now. Someone on Twitter, RSF 49ers on Twitter points out Isaac Guerendo stock is rising. That must mean he's recovering well from his knee injury. Remember, he injured his knee at the end of last year. We were all really worried, like, oh, God, please don't let it be an ACL. Now, it wasn't an ACL, but obviously he must be doing well because, again, you don't trade Jordan Mason if you have questions about Isaac Guerendo's health, and it sounds like the 49ers don't. So that's good. NorCal Refrigeration and HVAC says Brock is the next trade. Oh, God. If you want chaos, look, the 49ers love chaos. We know it's never boring with them, right? But I don't put it past them. I'll say that. I really don't. But I'm more hopeful that they just get a deal done right quick and in a hurry, even though, frankly, it's a little late now to be that quick. But I hope they don't trade him, but I wouldn't be shocked at all, if they did trade him. Because if they loved him as much as they say they do, he'd be signed by now. He'd have a deal. They could have reached a deal with Brock Purdy the second the regular season ended. If they loved him as much as they say that they do, he'd have a deal by now. Jimmy Garoppolo signed his deal with the Niners in February. Remember? And look what they said about Trey Lance. They never said a damn negative word about Trey Lance ever. And they traded him after 4 starts. They shipped him out of town. So they can say publicly, we love Brock. He's our guy. Hope he's here as long as I am. Don't pay attention to what they say. Pay attention to what they do or don't do in this case, which is sign Brock to a deal by now. Always, always, always pay more attention to what they do. Let me check. Oh, wait. This chat right here. Mr. Cartier 7 says, should have kept all your good running backs. Now you have to draft a running back with no guarantee he'll be good at all. That's true. But remember, you get that running back for 4 years. 5, technically, if you take him in the first round, but they're not going to do that. So that's part of the equation too. It's, yes, we're taking a little bit of a gamble, but again, remember, the Niners are good at finding running backs. They don't hit 100% of the time. I know they missed on some third-round running backs, but they have had a history of finding running backs in some unique places. So they're betting on a strength of their scouting department. They're betting on a strength of their scouting department to get them a new player that'll be under contract longer and that'll be under contract cheaper. That's why they're doing this. And I do think that makes sense, right? Every team has strengths and weaknesses in the draft. The Steelers, for a long time, were awesome at drafting wide receivers. They were killing it. So that made them less afraid to let good receivers like Emmanuel Sanders walk out the door because they had confidence that they were going to be able to replace that guy at a much cheaper level. That's what you should do. It's absolutely what you should do. Ian Sharp says Isaac Guerendo will be better. Chessmaster111 says, how many years was Jordan Mason on the 49ers? I can answer that question for you now. 3 years. Signed in 2022, played 2023, and last year, obviously, played 12 games, started 6, ended up with 789 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. Career yards per carry average for Jordan Mason with the 49ers, 5.3. He was a good player while he was here. They got a good player for very little money. As an undrafted free agent, they got a lot of production out of him. And then when they moved on, they acquired assets for him. That is a good business move. That's a good move by the 49ers. Gold Rush YouTube channel member says, is Jake Moody getting traded on April Fool? Traded? Trust me. We can argue over what Jordan Mason would have got on the open market. There is no market for a kicker that can't make a kick over 40 yards. There's nobody in the universe that's trading for Jake Moody. They'll probably have a kicking competition in that case. A Viking says, what the F is going on over there in Ninerland? Juice over Mason. I mean, I don't think it was one or the other. But again, this whole Kyle Juszczyk thing is super weird. Super, super weird. I don't know why they chose to do it that way, and hopefully they get asked about that as well. Our own Jason Aponte weighs in, and I think he really clears things up. He says the Niners moved up 27 spots in the draft, and they got another pick for an undrafted free agent, and it's a problem? All right, man. I totally agree with Jason. Yes, they moved up 27 spots. That's almost a whole round, right? There's only 32 picks in a round. They moved up 27 spots. I think it's a good move. I don't understand why you're upset about this. Again, especially considering we know how Kyle uses running backs, right? He likes to only really use one. Well, how do we know Jordan Mason wasn't going to be RB3 next year anyway? It might have been McCaffrey 1, Garendo 2, who they invested a lot more in than Jordan Mason, and then Mason 3, because Garendo's a much, much better receiver than Jordan Mason. And we know Kyle likes running backs that we can be receivers. So Mason might have been RB3 next year. Now you're worried that they traded RB3? They moved up almost a whole round in the draft for RB3 and you're mad about it? I disagree. I think it was a good move by the 49ers. Joe Boyd says they should trade back again at 11. They might. That's possible if they don't. I think they probably only have one or two guys that they would pick at 11 in that spot that they think is worth that pick. And if those guys aren't there, maybe they move out. The question I think for the Niners is going to be how many quarterbacks get picked in the top 10? Because obviously the Niners, you would think, are not interested in a quarterback in that spot. So that would leave more non-quarterbacks, more good players available for them when they pick at 11. There's probably going to be two. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, I would imagine, are probably the only two that are going to go in the top 10. I don't think that Jackson Dart is going to go that high. It'd be awesome for the 49ers if he did. Be fantastic, right? But that's what you want. Will any running back go in the top 10? Well, Genty, if he can go in, if you can get two quarterbacks and Genty in the top 10, that would be fantastic for the 49ers. Because now you really have a potential for Mason Graham to fall to you at 11 or Armin Membu. That would really make for a juicy run. It's going to be fun in the first round, man. As crappy as it was to go through this year, having the 11th pick makes the first night of the draft a hell of a lot more fun. We're going to be sitting there for every pick like, okay, all right, this guy's off the board. All right, scratch that name off the list. We're one move closer, you know? Because I think we'd all be pretty happy if Mason Graham was the pick. So we're all going to be sitting there like, and hopefully you'll be joining us on our live stream, by the way, because we'll be live for the whole first round of the draft. But we'll be sitting there like, okay, one name down. Graham is still there. All right, now who's on the clock now? Number 2. Is anybody trading up? It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be, I can't wait. I love the NFL draft. Obviously, we know this is a monumentally important draft for the 49ers. And now it looks like you might add running back to that list in a year where there's a ton of good running backs. Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. Andre Garibay says defensive tackle on edge has to be the pick at 11. You would think, God, their defensive tackles are really bad. Brisbee Life, shout out to Twitch and the Twitch fam, says we're getting Warren. It's a lock. Clyde Cash says draft the best player available, and that's it. I don't know. Normally I would be with you, Clyde, but like they really kind of pigeonholed themselves. I mean, look at the defensive tackles on the roster right now. It's Jordan Mason. It's Evan Anderson. It's Sam Okuwanu. I mean, it's really bottom of the barrel stuff. I mean, you could argue right now that nobody has a weaker interior defensive line than the 49ers. They really need to bulk it up. And this is the draft to do it in. If they spend their first 2 picks on defensive line and they hit, and those guys are starters, all of a sudden you're feeling a lot better about this defense. You're like, all right, we got Bosa and we got 2 solid players on the interior. They still don't have anybody else to really rush the passer opposite Nick Bosa, right? Because Leonard Floyd is gone. Drake Jackson is a non-factor. It's really thin there, so that scares you too. But your defensive front would be a lot more solidified. And if you're not constantly getting run over, the secondary has the chance to be really good. I love Diamador Lenore. I love Renardo Green. I like Malik Mustafa. Hopefully, with Robert Saleh, Jair Brown can be a lot better at the other safety spot. Maybe they get another safety in this draft. They've signed like every friggin' safety under the sun. I don't know if one of those guys is going to emerge. I doubt it, but you never know. But if Saleh can squeeze a little more juice out of these guys, then maybe you're not going to get run over every game. I think it was like 7 of the last 10 running backs the Niners faced last year ran for over 100 yards. They were getting shoved around. You cannot have that and have a respectable defense. So that's why this draft is so massive, man. Like they all are. Viking Jerome says, I'm back. Go Vikings, a-holes. Hey, you should be happy. If you're a Viking fan, you should be happy. You got a very good player, and you didn't give up a ton to get him. That should please you very much. Things, I know they got some quarterback issues in Minnesota, but damn, they're putting together a damn good roster. Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, man. When he was in San Francisco, he obviously knew what he was doing because he's been killing it since he got to Minnesota. That's for sure. Sean Merlin, says, does anybody else remember Mason admitting he couldn't handle the workload? He said he didn't know how Christian McCaffrey could do it for a whole season. That is true. And he said that pretty early in the year. He was like, damn, how the hell do you do this? It's a different thing, especially with Kyle Shanahan, because like we said, Kyle rides the workhorse, right? It's a different thing when you're getting every down, in and out. Jordan Mason was used to coming in and mop-up duty, getting like 5-6 carries a game when the game was decided and the defense was tired and he was kicking ass. It's a different thing when the defense is fresh and you're in there down after down. You get up, you run as fast as you can, as hard as you can, and you gain 5 yards. And then it's 2nd and 5, and you got to get up and you got to do it again. And Kyle hands it to you again. Maybe you break off a 25-yarder and then you get up again and Kyle does it again. Like he works running backs hard. It's not easy for everybody. It's not easy. Andre Garibay says Mason won't be a starter for the Vikings. I haven't kept track of their moves at running back this offseason, so I actually don't know. But, teams obviously can use more than one running back to great effect, as we've seen with the Lions. So that's it. That's the running back news for the 49ers today. Jordan Mason out, Kyle Juszczyk back in. Every time I think I'm done with Kyle Juszczyk, they pull me back in. Can't get rid of this guy, man. He's like an NFL cockroach. You can't kill him. I don't want him around, but you can't get rid of him, apparently. So there you go. I hope Juszczyk has a great season. Hope he works on his damn blocking because I feel like that's been falling off a little bit. One of the Niners' biggest problems is short yardage. Well, you would think a fullback would be pretty important in short yardage situations, and so far he hasn't helped. So hopefully he can get on board there and figure that out because it needs to get better. Absolutely. It's going to do it for this edition of the show. Thanks, everybody. If this is your first time checking us out, please like this video. Leave a comment. Tell me what you think about Jordan Mason. Subscribe to the channel. I promise you will like what you see. We're live every single weekday. We do news updates. We have long-form shows every single weekday. We do instant reaction when news breaks, clearly, as you can see. Please subscribe to the channel. I promise you we will earn your time. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday night, everybody. Thanks to everybody in the chat, all the YouTube channel members, all the new YouTube channel members. Hold on. Before I wrap up, someone's calling me out in the chat, so I should read this. J. Frank Parnell says, God, Rob, your facts are so screwed. Mason never did mop-up duty for CMC, 1 or 2 carries, and CMC the rest once a starter, but he got all the carries. Jordan Mason absolutely did mop-up duty in his first 2 years in the league. I watched the games. What are we talking about? I watched the games. Prime example, the Sunday Night Football game against the Cowboys a couple of years ago. CMC kicks their ass. The Niners kick their ass. Jordan Mason comes in, breaks off a long run, breaks off a touchdown run. Jordan Mason never did mop-up duty for Christian McCaffrey? What are we talking about? We watching the same team? I don't know who you're watching. Anyway, enjoy your Saturday night, everybody. We'll talk to you on Monday.